Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Can You Put Me on Guestlist? I always feel like I sing that at the beginning of every episode. Can you put me on Guestlist? Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Knight. I hope that you are all well. I am so excited to share this next conversation with you because we have been trying to organize this for such a long time and it's finally here. With me today is Corinne Przybyslawski, and what an absolute joy she is to chat with. You know, one of these people that just give you so much energy and bring you so much happiness when you're around them and you speak to them. That is what it's like when you speak with Corinne. She's so lovely, incredibly talented. She's like an encyclopedia of music. Like, you know, one of these people that just know so much about what they do. She's an absolute pro. Any genre, artist, music trends, you name it. She knows her stuff, which is probably why she has worked for some of the biggest platforms in electronic music. Corinne started out as a music journalist and has worked for platforms such as Resident Advisor, for Vice, for Mixmag, for CBC Music in Canada, and her latest role at Spotify as the editor of Dance and Electronic. So it was really interesting to get to know a little bit more about Corinne's career so far, how she started out in music journalism, and how her career then led her to work with Spotify, what her job consisted of there, and also how her job and tasks at Spotify also have contributed to her own sound as a DJ, because obviously as an editor at Spotify, the amount of music that she receives on a daily basis to be considered for Spotify playlists, I mean, absolutely a huge amount of music. So obviously she's listening to all different types of genres from artists all around the world. So I think it's really interesting just to know how do you get through that much amount of music. I mean, obviously this is just one part of what her job actually consisted of, but I thought that was really interesting and really exciting as well, to be able to discover all of these different sounds and artists, upcoming genres. So it was so lovely to chat with her, and we just have a really fun chat about her career so far, and of course end with a round of quick fire questions, which you know I love. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did recording it. This is Corinne Przybyslawski here on Can You Put Me on Guestlist. Enjoy. Oh, your dog in the bag is so cute.
No, she's upset because usually we would be out on a stroll right now, but she's being moody about it. She didn't want to go out too early.
What's her
usually
name?
It's Piper.
Piper.
Yeah. You'll meet her in Ibiza this summer because she's coming with me. So,
you're bringing Piper to Ibiza?
Yeah. If mom raves, pup raves too. That's how it works.
Wow. No way. Oh, that's so cute. Have you brought her over before?
No, but I mean, we're gonna be sticking around for like a month this time. And just like gallivanting around Europe in general. And I don't know, I felt bad. I left her at my parents' place last fall when we were out in Europe, and it 1 month turned into 3, and I just got, I don't know, a little lonely. I was like, no, I want to bring her this time. It's not that tough.
I know. I'm exactly the same. It's funny that Piper's sulking because my dog's in a mood as well, because it would normally be his walk time as well. And he's sat on the bed in front of me like this.
Yep. That was exactly her this morning. I was like, because we woke up early. We knew we had this appointment, right? So I was like, okay, we'll wake up early. We'll get everything sorted, get our coffee, get our bagel. And she was like, no, like wouldn't get out of bed. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to force this because I don't particularly want to get out of bed either. So that was it. Here we are. Now she's upset.
Oh, Piper and Disco can meet when you're here.
Is that your pup's name, Disco?
Yes.
I don't think I knew that. I love that, though. That's a great name. Oh, my God. They'll be besties.
He has an Ibiza name. He's an Ibiza pup, so he had to give him some kind of music name.
Disco's great, though. Did you always have him when you were living out there, or is this recent?
I've had Disco for the last 2.5 years.
Oh my God, yeah. So you would have had him when we met too. Wow.
Yeah. He changed my life. Aren't dogs the best?
I was reading this I saw this meme on the internet the other day where it was like the soul dog that changes a woman's life in her mid-20s or whatever, and I was like, that is actually exactly what Piper is. She's been like my emotional support blanket for the last like 2.5 years.
Is she 2.5 as well?
Yeah. She's gonna be 3 in September, so that's probably a little over half. But I digress.
Oh, I can't wait to meet her and to have you here back in Europe. That's so exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited about it. Visa definitely left an impression, and I feel like I'd like more time than I was there for what, like a week, and we were out like every single day. Like
You went out loads.
Lunch.
It was your first time as well, wasn't it? Here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that was so much fun the day I got to see you here.
Yeah, Ushuaia. That was very, very fun.
That was.
But it's just Ants is just like a day party that happens on the weekends, right?
Yeah, it's just on a Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, fun. I loved it.
Yeah. And then we bumped into each other at ADE in October.
Yeah. Solid.
I did not expect you there. And then all of a sudden I turned around, I was like, no way.
I mean, where else would I be? I feel like we talked about this. We've talked about my whole tech house love affair. Like, that's definitely a soft spot for me.
That's true. I should have just expected you. I should have been looking out for you. That was so nice. How
long did you end up staying at that show? I lost you backstage after a while.
Okay, so that show, I had to be on air on the radio, on Balearica Radio that night, I think at like 7 p.m. Mm-hmm. So we were broadcasting from Adam Tower, which was over on the other side of the river. Yeah. So from that venue, from that warehouse where Solid Grooves was to where we were broadcasting from, I think that was like 20 to 30 minutes away. I pushed it so fine to get to this radio show. I literally ran through the door like, okay, I'm here, give me my headphones.
She's arrived.
Yeah. But I remember being there being like, I so don't want to leave right now. And everybody after a few drinks, everyone was like, just stay. You should have just bought your microphone and do it from here. I'm like, yeah, that's what everybody says in the moment, but it's not that easy. And then I was like, there is this way where the producer can call me over WhatsApp and through Bluetooth we can do the radio show. And I was like, should I just call in and be like, we can call from the show, which I probably should have done because that would have been fun. But then it was so loud backstage. There was so much happening. I was like, no, Katie, be professional and get out of the club and go to the radio show.
Get out the club. Literally, I know that feeling. That's what ADE felt like in a nutshell. Is like, I felt like I was constantly just being torn from one event to another and I never wanted to go. And the Uber situation in Amsterdam is a hot mess. I should have just gotten a bike. Cycling from rave to rave.
You know what though? No, but honestly, it's the best way because the Uber situation is really crazy in ADE. It's so hard to get from anywhere.
The surge was brutal too. Like it was like not unheard of to be shelling out with like 40, 50 euro on like a 10-15 minute trip. I was like sick.
Yeah, it's true.
I love it here.
It's true. Did you enjoy it though in general, ADE?
It was my first time. There was lots of firsts in Europe last year. This was the theme of 2022. She arrived. It was amazing. I honestly, it left such an impression on me. I have this terrible habit where I show up in a new city or a new country that I've never been to, and I'm like, I could move here. And so that was me. That was me after Ibiza. That was me after Berlin. And then obviously it was me after Amsterdam too. And all my friends are like, Cor, like you just moved to New York. Like, really? I'm like, yeah, no, I think Amsterdam's next.
They're like, yep, we've heard that one before. We've definitely heard that one before.
Yeah. The crazy thing is though, is that once I make up my mind on something like that, it does tend to happen. Like I'm in New York right now. I'm not from New York. I'm from Toronto originally. So it's like, speak it into existence, you know?
Yeah. So we'll be looking for a place for you in the next couple of months here in Ibiza then.
Literally. Seriously though, I have to start looking because I've heard it gets really crazy, especially during opening season and IMS and all that. I'd like to scope that one out too.
Oh, IMS you would love. You should come to IMS.
Yeah, I mean, members of the UK team out from Spotify, I know that they make like an annual appearance out there, and so that was the first time hearing about the summit. Like I know nothing about it, except from what I understand, it's a lot more focused on the European markets. Yeah. But
it's great though. It's a really great place to like meet people, network, and it's fun. It's also the same time as the Ibiza opening party, so there's like always like that's happening.
Yeah,
on the island.
The island wakes back up. I'm excited because I mean I got to see the closing season last year, so I think it's only fitting that I come back for opening season. So that'll be great.
Of course. If you've done the closings, then you have to come to the opening.
They have to flip it back to the front, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy because a lot of people often ask, like, which one would you prefer? It's so different. It's so different in terms of like the energy on the island, because at the beginning of the season, it's like these pre-season nerves that we haven't seen. A lot of people leave after October. A lot of people leave the island. So you'll like make friends over summer and then you'll never see these people for like the next 6, 7, 8 months. So the openings are like, yes, everybody's coming back. The clubs are opening and it's like this really like exciting time. And then the closings are like, wow, we've done it. We've got through another season alive. Let's celebrate. Yeah. So it's like totally different vibes, but they're very, very exciting.
Yeah, I heard from a lot of the locals that it was like low-key a little bit jaded. They're like, oh, I can't wait. I can't believe it's over. It's finally done. I was like, oh, wow.
No. I'm like that every year. When I get to the end of August, I'm like, this is my last season. I'm not doing this again. I'm done. I'm out. I'm off the island.
Get me home. Oh, I'm so excited though. It was such a fun experience. And I feel like, yeah, more time is just more time. So stoked.
Yes. So you just mentioned that you are originally from Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Where did everything start for you? Where did your love for music come from, and what were your first steps into the music industry?
I mean, I wish I had an idea of where it came from, because sincerely, it's something that's just sort of haunted me for the entirety of my life. And when I was younger, I didn't think it was something I could turn into a career either. I tried piano lessons. I hated the structure, so I gave those up, not quickly, but eventually. And then I think when I was 18, I sort of made the decision to move out to Toronto from a smaller suburb just outside of the GTA. And that by then I had already decided that I wanted to be DJing and I wanted to be producing music. I had downloaded Ableton, started noodling around with production. But, when you move to a big city, you don't necessarily know anyone or have any sense of like what the community is like and like how to sort of insert yourself into it. So the legal drinking age in Toronto is also 19, not 18, which I was when I moved there. So not only did I not have like access into the club, I also had no idea how to get myself backstage and like insert myself into the rooms where I could actually meet the people who could help me learn the things I needed to know. So I don't know. I mean, I was pretty proud of myself for this idea because it felt pretty ingenious at the time. But I got a gig like writing show reviews for my school's newspaper. Mm-hmm. And then that just like stuck me backstage and got me the access that I needed, which was, in hindsight, it's pretty brilliant. But at the time I was like, well, this will do. It's not what I want, but it's what I've got. So
and look where it got you. It worked.
I really did. Yeah. I mean, I ended up having like an uncanny knack for it. I think because like I spoke the language, you learn the sort of terms of production or whatever. And I was just able to connect with artists on what my editor said was a more sincere level than most of the writers on her staff. So I was able to turn out like really good interviews and very strong profiles and pretty in-depth reviews when I was going to these shows. And so I kind of just stuck with it. I was writing for my school's newspaper for several years purely because of the access it afforded me. Like my editor was fantastic for that. She just sort of knew exactly how to reach to like PR people and set me up in the club. Oh my God. Okay. Funny story, just to show like literally how little of an idea I had on what it takes to be a journalist. My editor had connected me with like a PR person who had set me up for one show one time. I think it was like Shlomo or something. And there was this club in Toronto called the Hoxton. So she had set me up there. I can't remember who the next artist was that I was going to go and review. And it just happened to be at the same club, but it was, how these things work. It's a different PR person for every act.
Exactly.
Not a clue, had no idea. I bypassed my editor, CC'd her because I was like, oh, I'm going to be proactive. Like, I'm going to actually maybe lean into this for a second. Went and emailed this wrong PR person who had nothing to do with this act. I wish I could remember who it was. It's probably Flume or something. Like, it was like a headliner kind of idea. So anyways, went ahead, emailed this PR person. I'm like, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. Like, I'd like to, be writing about this show, like write a review at this place. Is it possible to get set up for Guestlist? Like, +1 if you can. And this chick writes back and she's like, hey, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Like, I don't manage this project. Like my editor's on CC for all of it too. Just like watching this chaos unfold.
A for effort though. I mean, you tried.
I really did. Yeah, so that was fun. That was humbling. But yeah, I mean, I stuck with the journalism for a while because like I said, it did afford me a lot of really cool experiences and opportunities. And with each one, like with each piece that I wrote, it had a tendency to bloom into something bigger. So it started with an album review, then it started turning into profiles, then it started turning into like, front cover type ideas with the newspaper or things that would get a bigger splash. So the shows that I was able to gain access to also got bigger over time. Eventually I got picked up by Vice Media, which was, I think that was probably one of the bigger turning points as far as the journalism went. I was still DJing and producing music at this time, but I definitely started to feel a bit of a shift in focus. A lot of that had to do with the pressure that I put on myself just as like as an artist. I had like really high expectations for what I was going to do with music, and I think it just sort of like ruined it for me in a lot of ways and forced me to put it down. So I doubled down on the journalism when I was at Vice Media, and then I ended up writing a piece that just got crazy viral circulation, and that got me onto the radar of this woman named Susan Jacobs, who's like a music supervisor. She specializes in soundtrack craft, and so that was the next pivot.
What was the piece on that went viral?
What was it called? I should know this offhand. It was about female composers in Hollywood and how many of them there are and how little recognition they get, or like how little visibility rather they have. It was anchored around the Oscars, so we had a major sort of cultural moment pushing the story as well. And so I think like United Nations had circulated as well. Like there were a lot of just major brands that sort of had published it. This is back in the heyday of Twitter. So they had like reposted it from Vice, and it just got a lot of pickup across social channels. And so, yeah, eventually I got connected with Susan Jacobs, and she this is my last year of uni. She ended up inviting me out for an internship in New York. And so, yeah, that was the first foray into New York.
And that's when you moved to New York?
The very first time, yeah. I was only there. I was like back and forth for 6 months. But
between Toronto and New York at that time.
Yeah, like I did 2-3 month stints in total. And yeah, that was like a really cool experience as well, because I think the best thing that people can take away from those internships, it was unpaid, is digging through someone's like brain, like picking their brain for knowledge. And so what I got to do for Sue was digitize her music library. And this woman's been in the music industry since like, I want to say like the 60s or the 70s. Like she's been around for forever. Yeah. And she's worked, with everybody. Like she was able to write like a personal letter to Led Zeppelin to get their music cleared for Big Little Lies. Like that's the caliber that we're talking here about. That's her experience huge in the industry. Yeah. And so it was really cool because she just had all these like tracks back there, like singles and LPs that had just never hit like digital media or never been, circulated on like streaming services or anything like that. And so just sitting there helping her sort of organize her library, I feel like that was the best education in music I could have gotten. Absolutely. And also just getting a better understanding of like what it means to put a song into a movie. Like the way that this woman works. I remember we were working on this one movie called 18 to Party, and we were spotting a segment of the film that I personally was really struggling with. It was just a difficult scene, and I'd tried a couple of different flavors, had some ideas, and just couldn't quite land the song that would give the scene like that feeling. And so I finally tapped her for help, and I was like, hey, like, if you don't mind just taking a look and letting me know what you think. She literally within seconds was like, this is the song. Like just pulled it out of the air and was like, yes, Velvet Underground, blah, 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 Pale Blue Eyes, or whatever song it was. I know it was a Velvet, maybe it was Candy Says. I can't remember. Anyways, it was wild just watching her be able to pull this out of a hat like that.
Wow. The amount of music that she must have in her head. And to be able to
encyclopedia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. And then, so what happened? So how long were you working with her for? Did you say?
It was 6 months in total. I did 2-3 month stints in New York. Like I broke them up because it fell over the holidays. So then I went home for the holidays and came back. But yeah, so I was there. She couldn't extend my visa in the US, so I had to come home. And so I went back to Toronto and then fell back into the music journalism. It's always been this sort of trusty thing that I fell back on. It's funny because I if you'd asked me during that time when I was writing actively, I would have told you I don't like music journalism. I don't want to be doing this. Like, I don't know why I'm still doing it. People kept offering me work, so I kept taking it. You're broke and you're a student. Like, you don't really have any other choice. But in hindsight, I am grateful that I continued playing in that arena because it did keep me very current.
Yes.
You know, it forces you to really study the industry and stay on top of what's next. Editors are really only interested in you know what no one else has heard of. Like, that's the idea of breaking a story. So getting into that mindset, I think, again, in hindsight, was a really good sort of just training ground for eventually moving into curation full time, you know, whether that was DJing or my role at Spotify as an editor.
What do you think is the most challenging part of music journalism, especially as a freelance?
I think balancing reader appetites, you know, something salacious, something that has like a very strong headline with something that's, you know, enriched in culture and just genuinely like something more informative than it is exciting, you know? And I think the two aren't mutually exclusive. Like, I think pieces that are really deep and, you know, are identifying tastemakers before they break, that's the stuff that I always love to write about. But it can be tough, you know? Like, I remember when I interviewed Hans Zimmer, I had worked on that pitch for a while because I didn't think it was going to land, right? And this was published through Thump as well, which was like a dance and electronic vertical within Vice. Yeah. So that's exactly what I mean, you know, like the vertical's audience was your classic main stage dance enthusiast, right? And so that is the sort of challenging part, is like, how do you make someone as revered and just incredibly talented to a music fan as Hans Zimmer and position them to someone who's more just interested in, like, you know, the Beatport Top 100. And no shade to Thump. We worked very hard. We worked very hard to sort of turn the brand around, my editor and I, when we were working there. So, yeah.
How long were you working with Vice for?
My internship lasted, I think, again, 6 months in total. And then I was freelancing for them once Thump got absorbed into Noisy and then Vice proper. I kept freelancing for them for a while. Like, Vice was kind of, I think, my home as a freelance journalist, although I ended up writing for Resident Advisor and Mixmag eventually too.
Oh, really?
All just on freelance engagements. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so how did that position then take you on to working at Spotify? How did that all plan out?
There was a pretty significant gap, right? I can't remember off the top of my head what the years were at this point. I think between 2017 and 2021. No, I'm fucking up my dates. I got back from New York in 2017, I think, or 2018.
I think, do you know what? Because there was the whole pandemic thing in the middle, it's really confusing sometimes, like, what happened in them 3 years. I sometimes think, like, I don't know what I was doing at that time, apart from sitting in my house.
Literally, though, when I was in Venice in the fall, right, I was having a conversation over coffee with a friend of mine, and we just never talked about how old we are. And so I literally, with full conviction, told him I was 27. I'm not 27. I'm 28 years old. Like, I literally, like, I would have just died on that hill. I'm like, no, I'm 27 years old. He makes fun of me for that to this day. He's like, the only person I know who forgets their age is my mother, and she's over the age of 65. So I don't blame her. And I'm like, I'm sorry. But anyways,
it's a blur. It's just a blur.
Yeah, back to your question. I got back from New York in 2018, and then I started at Spotify towards the latter end of 2019. So there was a pretty significant gap, and I was quite burnt out on the freelancing. So at the top of 2019, I actually just got a full-time job that had nothing to do with music. I was an audience development editor, manager. I essentially was helping a media outlet target audiences and develop their digital strategy on social media, I think it actually ended up laddering into my role at Spotify in a pretty, again, unlikely way, because a big part of the role of an editor is to understand how to archetype and segment and identify audiences, right?
Yeah.
And so having that sort of 9-month crash course to just focus strictly on exactly that, targeting audiences, profiling users, and just kind of understanding what it means to to deliver content in a way that's accessible and palatable to a very specific person, it was cool. But I mean, I couldn't get out of that job fast enough. Like,
isn't it crazy though? Some things you go into it thinking, oh, this is probably not what I want to do. But then when you look at it in the long run, you're like, actually, that's a really good, it's a good thing that I did do that, because I've taken all of these, learn it, and can now use it for my next job or for other things in the future.
Yeah, 100%. And like I mentioned, you know, like I had put all this pressure previously to be successful, you know, whatever that means, as like an artist, and burnt myself out on it, and then landed in this gig as a music journalist that, again, my heart wasn't entirely invested in, and that was also just burning me out. So honestly, by the time that I started at this media outlet, I was pretty burnt out on music as a whole. You know, I was 24 going on 25. I was kind of ready to just not. You know, I was like, I had my headphones, I had my playlist. So I was like, I'm just gonna enjoy listening to music for a little while. How about that?
Yeah.
So
it's nice sometimes to have that break, I think, from music in the industry, because then it gives you time to miss it and then realize like what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I lasted at that job for about 4 months before the travel bug bit me. And then I went to Thailand for 6 weeks. Maybe it was 5 weeks. You can't ask me about dates. I never know. I literally never know what's going on. This is terrible. But anyways, no, I went to Thailand, and I don't want to be one of those people who has like a corny, like spiritual experience overseas. But there's something about traveling that it focuses your identity. Do you know what I mean? Like it distills it. You're meeting so many people. You're kind of just like, you have limited time to sort of introduce yourself and let everyone know what you're about and connect. And so getting into that mode again, I hadn't traveled for a minute, and just meeting so many new people and people asking me like, so what do you do? Like, what do you love? I think that sort of recalibrated what I wanted from life, period. And I came home with like a really potent sort of realization that, yeah, okay, no, we do want to get right back into music. It's time.
We do. Yes.
So, I mean, coincidentally enough, I get back and I'm in the office for, it must have been like maybe like 2 weeks max. And an opening at Spotify pops up on LinkedIn on their Canadian team of all places. Like when I got back, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say like it was meant to be.
Literally though, but I'll tell you this story because this is actually another good one. The emotional roller coaster of getting hired at Spotify was something that I would go on and talk to my therapist about for months, because I get back from Thailand and I'm starting to work on my artist visa for the US, because I was like, okay, I love music. I felt so at peace with myself when I was living in New York. I don't know what it was about that city, but I got to find my way back. And it's pretty difficult for Canadians to immigrate. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to bite the bullet, shell out the 10K on the legal fees, and just get this artist visa and pack it over to New York, and we'll figure the rest out, because everything has always worked out there. So I'm like starting to engage counsel, whatever, found an attorney that was going to work with me. And I'm like literally ready to go to the bank and get pretty much my life savings onto a check and shell it out and be like, here we go, let's get to New York kind of idea. And that's when the listing for this role at Spotify pops up.
Wow.
And I was like, it just kind of felt like, oh my God, well, this is a sign. We're going to not shell out our savings.
Put it back into the bank.
Yeah, literally, we're going to hold on to this for another rainy day. Today is not it. And so anyways, I apply for the job, and within 24 hours, I get like a standard rejection letter. Like, it's like, thank you for your interest in. Yeah, literally within like 24 hours. Yeah. So this is where the emotional roller coaster begins. So yeah, within 24 hours, I get, you know, the standard sort of automated response saying thanks, but no thanks. And I was like, well, womp. But I don't know. It wasn't enough to convince me off of pursuing something in music again, because like even in that 24 hours, I just like gotten my hopes set so high.
Yeah.
I'm also the kind of person where, you know, I don't really take no for an answer, and I never just apply to jobs through the standard lane. You know, like obviously before I'd submit my application, I already knew who the hiring manager was. I knew who the head of the team was. I had like gone out to all my pals and been like, give me all their emails. I need to send them a note. So I'm like a gremlin when there's something that I want. Like I literally will just go right after it. But
It's
One
like
track
signing
mind.
up doing your school newspaper to get backstage. Just same kind of
That's what
story.
I'm saying. Exactly. Like my persistence, it's both a gift and a curse. Um, but yeah, so I mean, thank God that I had done all that outreach and, you know, asked around for the hiring manager's email, because I had shot him a note, and a month later, he he hits me back, saying, "Hey, like we'd love to have you out for an interview. Let me like I'm just seeing this. It hit my filters, but I was just going through my inbox and I caught your note. Let's get this mobilized." And I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So wild times. And then, I mean, the rest moved pretty smoothly.
But
After
during
that, it
that
was
month, what were you doing? Like during that month, had you gone back to the bank or what was going on?
no, I mean, I just went through like an existential crisis. I was like, here we go again. Like, nothing ever goes my way. I interviewed for a gig with Red Bull in Austria. I was going to move to Salzburg. You know me, you've partied with me. You know that Salzburg is just not it. I don't
Not your
see,
place,
like,
babe.
no. Thinking why I wanted to move to Austria of all places, like whatever. I think I just wanted to get out of Toronto. Like that's been
Yeah,
another thing.
I need to be
Like,
out.
it was just time to go, you know. So, anyways, the the interview process moved pretty quickly. Like it was like week after week. It was all pretty fluid. And I don't know. I never really at any point in the process did the thought ever cross my mind that this wasn't going to be my job. I was like, no, they're gonna hire me. Like this is my job. Like I've got the job. And then I think the total interview time, or the amount of time that I spent interviewing and going through the process was probably close to about 8 weeks, so 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So then that stretched us out to September, and then that's when I started. I accepted the gig like immediately, and that was it.
And you were based in Toronto, so you didn't have to move to New York at that time.
Not just yet, no, because when I started at Spotify, I was actually just more of a generalist. I didn't have a genre focus just yet. I obviously had genres that I focused on. Every editor does, but I was an editor for a market, which means that I was editing playlists for Canada, like as a
Okay.
you know, yeah, rather than focusing on dance and electronic, which I ended up moving into like a little while later. I think just a year and change later.
For people that are listening and probably don't know like what you mean when you refer to editing at Spotify, what did your role kind of consist of?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of listening, as expected. I would say the majority of my week was spent just digging through the music that gets pitched to the platform, and just sort of filtering my way through it and finding the stuff that I was going to eventually go and place into playlists. And that's the other portion, or the other component of editing, is slotting it into the playlists. I'm simplifying it because there are several internal metrics that editors use, and there's a whole lot of data and just even research and cultural analysis that goes into deciding what makes it from the submission onto a playlist. So there's a lot more depth to the role than just listening to music and putting it somewhere.
Yeah,
but for simplicity's sake.
Do you only go through music that's submitted, or can you music that has been like sent over to be, what was the word you just used? Not submitted.
Pitched
is the word.
Yeah.
Is it only music that's been pitched, or could you be like out and listen and hear a track and be like, no, I'm definitely going to use this track?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, that's sort of the thing about being an editor, I think, is that your ears are always on, as corny as that sounds. Like, and I think that's why the deeper that I got into my role at Spotify, the more I sort of fell in love with DJing again, because the two really fueled one another. I connected with underground club culture a lot more because I was seeking it out for myself, and then I was able to sort of stay on top of things a lot quicker than simply just going through the submissions. The submissions are an important part. I mean, that's the foundation. That's why artists are always encouraged to kind of publish their stuff through Spotify for Artists, etc. But yeah, I definitely was using more than just the submissions. I mean, stuff bubbles up on the internet, things go viral. Like you've got to be as receptive to culture as you are perceptive of it, if that makes sense. So definitely multiple sources.
And then from there, how did you end up moving back to New York?
Yeah, so I was at Spotify for I think a year, or just even under a year. it might have been less than a year at this point, when the dance and electronic editor role had freed up. And I hadn't been formally asked to step into the role. I was just asked to lend a hand in sort of filling the gaps while they found their backfill. But that very quickly sort of reignited my love for dance and electronic music in a way that, I mean, honestly, even I didn't anticipate. It kind of spooked me a little bit because my whole beat when I was doing music journalism was writing about techno and underground club culture and sort of, you know, that whole world. And like I mentioned earlier, I was pretty burnt out on every aspect of the dance industry. And I thought I was going to be an indie editor, to be honest with you. Like, that's what I really loved. I missed guitars. But then, and then this role opened up, and so I was lending support, and I was like, no, this very much was just familiar in all the best ways.
Yeah.
So,
but when you were DJing at the time, what kind of music were you playing? Was it electronic music? Was it underground, or like, where were you at that point?
So when I started DJing, I think the key moment in my life that influenced my set lists was experiencing Sonar out in Barcelona. So I really fell in love with alternative electronic music, like Fortet, Nicholas Jar, anyone in that sort of more experimental and left field sort of space. Musique concrète and just the idea of ambient soundscapes and sound design in that capacity, I think it connected really well with my background in cinema studies, which is what I studied in uni. So I was always sort of left of center. I was not very good. So I've definitely evolved since, if you will. And I sound nothing like the way that I did when I was DJing back then, when I play out today. But yeah, I don't know how that answers your question.
No, and no, I was just curious because I was thinking, if you know, you've worked with so many different genres and styles of music, like how did that affect the sound that you were playing, and how has like that evolved since you started up until now? Because listening to so much music from so many different artists and so many different styles of sound, it must have influenced your music and the way that you play heavily.
I mean, I think the fact that I was always really interested in the sort of alternative side of electronic in particular, like not even like formal dance music, I was always at arm's reach when it came to the commercial main stage. But, you know, because I worked in curation, I obviously understood that space really well. So I think what ended up happening was it enabled me to sort of know when I could push the envelope and take risks. By the time that I started playing more like club driven sets rather than, you know, headphone music, which is what I called the stuff that I would play before. Yeah.
Headphone
my sets
music.
My sets were very like airy fairy ethereal, and but yeah, I think like having the influence of multiple genres and being in a position where I was listening to so many different styles of music, it taught me how to discern what could be interesting and what could challenge a listener in a commercial context in a way that wouldn't be off-putting or alienating. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I'm really into, you know, Layla Benitez right now, Brina Naus, folks who are sort of playing with that like intersection of like indie dance and melodic house. And it's the texture specifically in the music that they play and the music that they produce that I find super exciting. And that's sort of where I, even just on my own listening and the stuff that I'm making and playing now, where I do see different genres bleeding into what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just not your standard like 4/4 club like anthem. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So I think it's kind of a little bit like you know, some resident DJs, for example, like clubs like Amnesia, for example, every single night they have a different genre of music. One night you've got drum and bass and you've got techno, then you have a tech house night, and you know, there's every single night is a different sound. The resident DJs there, the ones that do the warm-ups, they play all different types of genres every night. So they're listening to so many different musics, so many different types of sounds and artists, that then when they, you know, it's easy for them to adapt to any crowd because they've had all this background of, you know, playing for so many different types of nights and styles.
And I 1,000% agree. I think that's something that's pretty wild to witness when it comes to a Solomon set in particular is, you know, I think the idea of an open format DJ is something that gets a bit of a bad name because it immediately brings to mind, at least in North America, I don't know what the perception is in Europe, but in North America, it often brings to mind like the college bar DJ where it's like top 40, hip hop, whatever, you know what I mean? But I think, I don't know, I think the ability to perform as an open format DJ, you know, understand what context to play techno in or what context to play, you know, the more organic, you know, melodic house in, etc. It's invaluable. Like that is the entirety of your success.
100%.
Read the room.
And that's exactly it. It's reading the room. Absolutely. Okay. So, you stepped into this position, so were you going back to New York or were you doing this from Toronto?
I had to do it from Toronto for a little while because this happened in the middle of the pandemic. So while the role was always stationed out of New York, I had to be based in Toronto because Canada was on lockdown. But in hindsight, I'm glad that it shook out that way because again, I was put in a position where we weren't going out. We weren't really allowed, like bars and restaurants and everything were closed. And the entirety of my team was somewhere else. So it was just me in my 500 square foot apartment, putting my headphones on and listening obsessively in a single lane for hours on end. Like, I mean, it was certainly isolating, but again, I regret nothing about it. It just really deepened not only my love for the genre, but the knowledge. And so when I got back into producing music, like I genuinely just opened up Ableton out of, you know, a creative impulse, a desire to make something again. It's day and night, the difference between the demos that I tried so hard on before versus the stuff that I was like making now just casually, like a throwaway sketch, like not even with any intention of making anything meaningful. Just, I don't know, why not? We haven't done this in a minute. And so that's kind of how it started. But yeah, so, and then I ended up moving to.
No, carry on. Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, I ended up moving, when I finally moved to New York, the visa process took a bajillion years. I really only ended up moving last May. You know, my visa was approved last February. And then I moved in May, on May 1st. So I got an incredible summer. I moved at the perfect time. But again, I was out like 4 nights a week at the Brooklyn Mirage primarily, like just back to back, like just literal marathon. Like I would go home, stay out until like 5, 6 in the morning, go home, nap, eat, and then back to the club. So it was the Ibiza marathon all over again. But enriching experience in a very different way. And that's why I say I'm grateful for the period of downtime that I had back in Toronto, because I wasn't going out there, and the club culture out there is not even close to the club culture that you see in New York. So different aspects of the
thing. So this might be a really strange question, but I'm just like picturing you, you know, listening to so much music every single day. Do you just like sit down and listen to music, or do you like get up and do things, have your headphones on, have a dance, cook and listen to music, or like how, like I just can't imagine just sat all day listening to so many different tracks. Like how do you do it? Like what do you do?
It really is not a particularly flattering scene. Like sometimes I wish I had a mirror like right next to me, because my posture over the years has just gotten so bad. Like I've become like a literal gremlin. That's why I call myself a gremlin all the time, because I'm just like sitting there on my computer. But I have that thing where I obsessively listen to a track when I really love it. And so it was always those moments like when I'd hear a submission that I was like, oh my God, this is like incredible. And I'm obviously listening to things ahead of time, like ahead of release day. That's the purpose of pitching through the tool. And yeah, I would definitely have like a little dance party in my apartment. Like just like buck the same song like 5, 6 times over. I'm one of those. Like if I find a track that I like get obsessed with, like I have to sit there and figure everything out about it. Like I'll just throw my headphones on and just until I hear every detail.
Wow. Fun. I can imagine. What do you think have been your biggest learnings from your time at Spotify?
I mean, it's gonna sound super corny, but I think it's underrated. The value of like collaborating with other people. I mean, it's pretty common sense, and I think anyone in music will tell you that you get so much further when you work with people and not against them. But I think especially being in a more just team oriented environment where it's like, as an artist, you can choose to work by yourself, and you don't really have to engage with anyone if you don't want to. You'll get a lot further if you do, but you really don't have to. But when you work in a workplace, you really do have to find ways to bring out the best in each other rather than try and put the best of yourself in front of everyone. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Makes sense.
And I just think, I just think that is something that I think it would have taken me a lot longer to learn that if I had remained freelance for the entirety of my career. And especially, pivoting back into creating and playing out, it's the community is everything. And I've just seen people not process that.
Yeah. And just want to do everything solo and by themselves.
Yeah. It's, there's a term for it, but
there is a term for
right
it
now.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's not lone wolf, but it's that sort of idea that, you are the brilliance in the room, and anyone else's input is secondary to yours. But I've actually churned out some of my best projects, both on the Spotify side and in life in general, by inviting people to sort of help me fill the gaps together. Because it's about identifying the fact that you've got them, everyone's got gaps. Even if you are great, you've got your lane, like two heads are almost always better than one.
100%.
If not 3 or 4, so it's kind of cheesy.
No, it's not. It's so true though. And it is, I think it's something that a lot of people don't take into account, and it is something that is very much underrated. And it's, as you said, 2 heads or more is so much better than just your ideas. It just gives you such a wider picture of whatever you're working on.
Tunnel vision is so easy to sink into. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to just lose perspective. And that's also something that I've historically always struggled with as a creative, like whether it was, a session file or an article or honestly even a playlist sometimes. Like, I just found that the roadblock was that last stretch because I had gotten so deep into my own perspective that it just always felt like, what is the finishing touch? And 9.5 times out of 10, it was my editor's edits or having someone else take a look at the mix and kind of put their take on it, or, having another editor come in and add their perspective on what that particular genre or hypothesis means to them. And that perspective is what carried it over to the end. So I don't know, that's definitely something that that I'll carry with me very deeply.
No, it's definitely a great thing to take with you. What's been your favorite project that you've ever worked on since starting out in music?
Oh my God, there's so many. So I think the Hans Zimmer interview was a big one, just because that was like to put a classical composer, like a film composer, in front of like a dance listener. Just huge. Something about that felt like a hack.
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
About that felt
Not
like
a lot of people can say that. Not a lot of people want to say they've done that.
I mean, he was also just such a, like a role model in so many ways, because his production style is really cool, actually. That was like one of my favorite anecdotes from the interview. The way that he composes his soundtracks and his scores is like, he's really good at reading piano rolls off of YouTube. Like, have you ever seen like when a song gets broken down and it's like literally the keys get visualized and go up? Yeah. So he's very strong in that, but he's not, like, I think he even outright said in our interview that he can't play the piano in the traditional sense. Like, he doesn't read sheet music or something to that effect, which I found bewildering.
Wow.
And so he said that the way he starts his tracks is he'll literally sit down in front of the piano and sit on his hands and just imagine the piano roll as you would see it on YouTube, just kind of going up. And that's how he writes his music. Right?
Mind blown. Absolutely.
And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because his music is so tonal and about like the sort of emotional impact of a single note, right? So it does make sense that he's not like creating these, very intricate sort of like compositional structures. It is very just, I don't know. So that one blew my mind. But then there was also this one playlist that we'd worked on at Spotify called Planet Rave. And that one was such a fun exercise, because I think the branding on that playlist all around is just so cute. It's a Gen Z focused playlist. So obviously it's extremely internet and very online. But I think the most exciting thing about working on that project was it was the first time where I kind of caught sight of a new generation of producers and just, young people experimenting with dance as a genre, which up until that point didn't really feel like it was like the hot space for Gen Z. yeah, I don't know, we coined this term bedroom rave to sort of, point at what this space was, which was reviving, like UK garage and drum and bass at first, but then pivoted into Eurotrance, and there's some techno in there. It's really cool. That was also a collaborative project as well. Like, again, this is why I say, like, it's so valuable to work with other people, because it's like my take on what that space sounded like was not the UK's take, was not Australia's take. So that was a really dope project to work on. We got merch. I still have it. I'm not going to go dig into my closet to show you, but it was really cool. Like, I think it was a really rewarding project to work on, because it was more than just, putting together a hypothesis and putting some music into it. It really felt well-rounded culturally and had a community around it. And so being able to be part of sort of building something like that up, again, really invaluable experience.
Absolutely. And also to work, as you said, with people like upcoming artists and giving them a platform to be able to have their music shown to the rest of the world. That must be like really rewarding for you as well.
I mean, it was such a deep niche, and I think the reason that it caught our eye was because it was so aesthetically oriented from every angle, like the production, artists, everything about it is just, it's dope fundamentally. But and oftentimes, like the artists that the team would source for, or the tracks that the team would source for that space, it's those artists, like, first time getting playlisted on the platform. So again, that's also really rewarding. I've always been, discovery driven as a curator. Like, I've always been just hinged on finding what no one else has heard of. It's a game for me. I love it. But that is the flip side of it, like removing myself from the reward is seeing how significantly these lists, they can change people's lives, which is dope.
100%. Absolutely. What advice would you give anybody that is looking to pursue a career in curation?
I mean, keep digging. I think knowing how to discern between genres, again, going back to, where I started, when my career in music started versus the ear that I've nurtured over the decade that I've been in the industry, I can pick apart, elements of a track. I think people call it active listening. It's really valuable to get into that habit, and just when you're digging through music, just having a think on where it might fit, whether it's the context or the genre space that it fits under, what elements of different genres is it playing with to classify it under XYZ space. So that was one part of it. And then the other big lesson that I took away from, especially my role as an editor, but just over time, I think learning how to associate a community around a certain, whether it's cluster of artists or style of tracks, those things are very real. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's a good way to phrase this? Like, I think anyone in, like the progressive house space can play with elements of commercial tech house, but they would never be affiliated with like a John Summit or a Michael B.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's the difference in that. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I think that's also pretty valuable, like just knowing where different communities intersect and where they don't.
Very much so. Yeah. It's been so lovely to talk to you. I wish we were actually in person and having a cup of coffee together, and we could have this.
I know.
It's been so nice. To end though, will you do a round of quickfire questions with me? They're very quick.
Yeah. Sure. Oh my God, sure. Dude, I could talk all day. Are you kidding me?
Okay, I know, me too. I could literally sit here and listen to you here. You have had and are having such an interesting and amazing career, and I'm so excited for everything that's going to come for you, because you're just so amazing. I'm so grateful that I got to meet you. We met on the WhatsApp. I've spoken about this WhatsApp group. It was on the WhatsApp group, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. This was another instance of me blowing up my phone and not realizing the consequences of my own actions. Literally sent out, I just wanted girlfriends to hang with, period. I was in Ibiza and I was hanging out with my friend Wes, and he just I might as well be allergic to the sunlight. Like, he literally spent the entire day in the room and didn't want to leave. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go find some girlfriends and hang in that case. And so I had access to this group, sent out a signal being like, hey, this is what I do. Anyone wants to hang? I just, again, was not expecting the outpour of people who'd be down to hang. I just didn't think I was that
And
interesting.
everybody wanted to hang with. How would we not want to? You're amazing. I was like, yes, I love her already. It's so nice that when people like reach out just to be like, hey, I'm in this, because for a lot of people, like, you know, it can be nerve-wracking just reaching out to a group, which has, like, by the way, nearly 400 people in this WhatsApp group.
I know.
Just reaching out and be like, hey, I'm in this city. Does anyone want to hang? Like, not a lot of people would do that. So I was like, yes, I love that. Of course, I want to hang out with you. And look where we are now.
The irony of it all is like, I mean, you are so extroverted. Like, I wouldn't surprise me seeing a message like that from you at all. But like, I generally, it does take me a lot to reach out and to, yeah. I mean, we just hit it off from day one. I told you were stuck with me.
I know, you're stuck with me too. So it's a good thing. And then you were like, when I saw you ordered a margarita, I was like, she's my girl.
Love a spicy marg. Love a spicy marg.
Yes.
But yeah.
Okay, really quick quick fire questions. Okay. You can play back to back with anyone. Who would it be?
Layla Benitez. Right now, I'm obsessed with her.
Oh, me too. Me too. She's amazing. What was the last thing that you Googled?
I think the last thing that I Googled was probably where I could get ex-DJs, like an ex-DJ setup in Brooklyn, because the irony of living in New York, everyone is a DJ. It's infuriating. And so it's impossible to get any kind of equipment. And I've been like trying to get a home setup in my space. I tend to borrow like a set from a pal when I really need it, if I'm like hosting people or whatever. So, because literally someone's always got it. This is a fun thing. Someone's always got it. But yes.
That was the last thing you Googled.
Yeah.
Favorite city to party in?
Ooh.
I knew this was going to be a hard one for you, as soon as you love going everywhere.
I know. Oh my God. It's got to be between Ibiza and Amsterdam, because both are so different. But I love a warehouse party. So I love that about Amsterdam. But there's something about just like the sunlight, day parties, and generally just being on an island and like listening to dance music. That's the fun part about Ibiza for me. And I've always Spain just has always had my heart in a strange way. So that's it.
Best hangover cure?
Oh my God. I wish I knew, because mine kick my ass every time.
Once you know it, let us know.
Yeah. I mean, my go-to is usually like a liter of coconut water and sitting on the couch and waiting for it to go away. It's not particularly exciting. I don't really leave my house. Maybe spicy penne. I'm disgusting. I've become such a creature. When I'm
so disgusting, she says.
Just give me like a spicy like penne alla vodka.
Oh, that sounds so good right now. But favorite late night snack?
Mac and cheese. I'm a big pasta girly.
I see that. Mac and cheese. Oh my God, I love
with like a shitload of hot sauce too.
You're like me. You love everything spicy, don't you?
Everything, literally everything. If I could put hot sauce on it, I will. It's
me too.
It's borderline gross.
I have in my purse these little mini bottles of Tabasco and also a sachet of chili flakes, and I carry them around in my purse.
I love that.
Just in case, because some places you're like, can I have hot sauce? And then they'll give you something that they think is hot. I mean, Tabasco isn't actually that hot, but at least it's something, because you can buy like these little mini bottles. But having chili flakes in your purse is perfect, because you just get them out whenever you need them.
That's amazing. No, but that's such a fun party trick too. It's just like, imagine you're at a place where you can't order like a spicy marg, and it's like,
my friends are like, you're so weird, like you have issues. I
love that though. I'm totally gonna steal that one from you.
And finally, because this podcast is called Can You Put Me on Guest List, when people ask you for guest list, do you have a guest list rule?
I think this is the irony of the amount of time that I've spent in the industry and the roles that I've held, is I have like no pull when it comes to guest list. Like, Ask anyone who knows me. I'm often freaking out about who's going to put me on guest list, let alone who I'm going to put on any kind of a list. So yeah, I don't know.
You should be at the top of the lists. You should be.
I mean, you would think, but no, I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's the Canadian meekness coming through. I'm always just like to ask people for stuff. So it's like, I would never be that girl to be like, beep, beep, beep.
You're so sweet.
I think one rule, I'm happy to put you on as my +1. So if that counts, like if I have lists somewhere, I'm always looking for girlfriends or whoever to take out with me. Like I love doing that. I love being the person pulling someone through the door.
Yeah.
But it's like, no one asks me because everyone knows I don't have very much pull.
But you know what's probably a good thing? Like start getting guest lists, but nobody needs to know that, and then nobody will like no, you won't have like friends pestering you. So it's a good thing, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, yeah, because like my a lot of my friends who like DJ and like play clubs and stuff, they're like they've told me that it's like, oh, like people will just turn up and ask and be like, yeah, +5, +10 because it's my show, and it's like you realize you're taking this entirely from my ticket sales. Like this isn't free. 100%. Like I'm paying for you and your squad.
Exactly. So, I interviewed somebody a couple of days ago it was the founder of SXM Festival. And we were saying that, you know, the cool thing now is to actually like pay to go into a club, you know, like if we expect everyone to be on guest list, nobody's going to make any money. If we want these parties to stay alive and, you know, to carry on running, we need to all do our part sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, not the whole guest list shenanigans. I know. I think like my rule is if the ticket is like $20 or less, $15 or less, like you can pay for the door. Yeah. And if it's a friend, like it depends on what the context of the show is for me.
Yeah.
Like if it's a major club or whatever, then and like there's a proper promoter going through it, then I'll probably still ask and it's fine. But like I said, if it's like, you know, just a small space, yeah, and it's, you know, they're kind of like starting out, it's like, yeah, I want to see you win.
Yeah, exactly.
Take my $15, you know?
Exactly 100%. My love, it's been so wonderful to chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We finally made it happen because we've been talking about this for so long, and I'm so happy that the day finally arrived.
Oh, me too. I'm stoked to chat IRL, so I'll let you know as soon as I touch down, and then we'll hang. We're marks.
Yeah, with mugs, of course. I'll get my sachet of spice out.
It'll be great.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful dog walk.
Yeah, thanks. I will.
Sending you a big kiss.
Bye.